Hajime! Welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. I'm JT McRoberts, and I'm joined today by a special guest,
Phil K.
What's up, Phil K?
What's going on? We're here for some Wolverine.
In the Comic Book Dojo. That's right. Today we're going to break down the fighting style of the one, the only Logan, or whatever his name is nowadays. James Hewlett? Howlett?
Is it Howlett?
Is it Hewlett?
Logan. That's what I like.
I don't know.
Logan.
Yeah, Logan works for me as well. So one thing to note is we're not going to be able to break it down too technically, but we'll pull out the things that we see here or there as we go along. And we're looking at issue 1 of the miniseries by Chris Claremont and artist Frank Miller. And I don't know about you, Phil K., but this is definitely a very influential story and series on my development as a comic book reader. And here you can see the various printings and versions that I have. I have the original issues of all but issue 1. I was able to score these in recent years for a pretty decent price, actually.
Okay.
I got, I think 3 and 4 I got together, and then I bought 2.
I actually have that statue, that version. They have 2 different versions. They have one with the lit, when there's all this in shadow. And they have one that's basically, not like the panel version like this, Okay. So the one I have has like the glowing flame, and actually I have that statue.
Ooh, nice. I haven't seen that. I even have the mini version that I think came with a movie. I think this was in a movie of some sort. Yeah, so it's a miniature reprinting, but then they added extras here in the back. You've got, I think that's a John Buscema. That's definitely John Buscema. Yep. There's Mike Zeck from the Captain America annual.
Gotcha.
Where he crossed over.
When they didn't fight, you mean?
Where they only fought on the cover. This scene does not appear in this comic book. And then nice John Buscema, I think from the Marvel Presents series, when they were doing the little mini series there.
First one on the end was during the Wolverine, that first Wolverine's that one's from the Wolverine series.
Issue 2. Yeah, because that was the rematch with Silver Samurai, which we might cover at some point. We'll definitely cover the first one. And it's interesting that they reprinted the trade paperback cover there. And it's nice to note that Miller's art was evolving at this time. So this was 1992 when this printing was released, at least. Now, I don't know how old this cover image is, if this was a part of the original collection or not. But this was about the time he was about to launch into... he was like a year or 2 away from Sin City. I mean, Sin City was coming out in like Dark Horse Presents at the time. And it was definitely post Ronin where he had that kind of strange phase where he mushed together Moebius and Goseki Kojima all together into one. And it was kind of a strange result. Though I've grown to love Ronin over the years, but it's not one of my favorites artistically.
It's been a long time since
Not like Sin City. Yeah. Or even the story, but, Sin City was actually the apex of his art, in my opinion. So this is a nice collection. I was introduced to this miniseries first by the regular Uncanny X-Men, because I think there was like an editor's note where they talk about, Wolverine he's back from Japan, and there's like a little note at the bottom, it's like, see the Wolverine miniseries. And I'm like, what is this Wolverine miniseries? I must know about this. And then you'd see ads for the miniseries in various Marvel comics, and then of course like in the magazines and whatnot.
And the sales for that thing was so incredible. They're like, okay, we're gonna give Wolverine his own book.
Yep. And now I did read it as the miniseries because the RA at my school had them, and this was the guy that he had Sandman, he had Wolverine, he had Grant Morrison's Animal Man, he had crazy Alan Moore Big Numbers, which was super rare. Beautiful stories for ugly children, like stuff that's too weird for me even. But he was just like, here's a stack of good comics. And I took them and read them and fell in love. And of course, this was absolutely one of my favorites. So I didn't get these originally off the shelves. I mean, they were hard to find. And these are the direct market versions here, because you can see the Spider-Man logo there in the bottom corner. And I think this came with a movie, maybe X-Men Origins, the Wolverine one. And then
are they all Wolverine
I guess so. I guess so.
Well, he is the fourth most popular character of all time, I think.
The fourth, okay. Behind Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, he's number 4.
I
believe it.
I think he's number 4.
He's definitely one of my favorites. This was a recent issue of Back Issue magazine where they talk about the first solo series. Okay. Now, it's worth noting that what Claremont talks about in this, he pretty much tells you all that in the introduction to the trade paperback, because I read both of them. Okay. I read both of them in preparation for this video, and he pretty much tells the same information about how they came up with the series, about he and Frank Miller riding in a car together and saying, hey, let's work on something, and the idea of getting to work on Wolverine, and they wanted to present Wolverine as something other than a berserker. So this was their first real chance to introduce that whole other side. And both Claremont and Miller shared an interest in Japan, which, you know, maybe came through cinema for Miller. I mean, or maybe even just comics and manga, because he was definitely a big Lone Wolf and Cub fan. But in 1982, you know, they're like 2 or 3 years removed from Shogun Assassin, where the Lone Wolf and Cub movies were being translated into English and released by Roger Corman's company. And you have that whole ninja explosion going on, obviously, at that time. And you mix all that together, and this is what comes out the other side, is the Wolverine miniseries.
So basically this is what the beginning of showing him as the masterless samurai, the Ronin.
Yes, the Ronin. They wanted to show him as having a sense of honor, a code, and that's something that really hadn't been shown in Wolverine over the X-Men storylines. He was always just kind of popping off and threatening people, like, you don't boss me around, and that kind of stuff.
Hey, bub.
Though it's also interesting to note that Miller says, not in this, but you have to get back issue for this, was that emotionally Wolverine is bouncing back from the death of Jean Grey, and that's why he's thinking of Mariko.
Gotcha.
So I thought that was actually a really nice character beat. So good stuff there. There you see a recoloring of that classic cover. I did not know this, but this is a Frank Sinatra album cover.
Oh, okay.
Frank Sinatra does that, and he's got his hat on.
I guess he doesn't have the claws.
He does not have claws. But he looks just as cool. So I point that out because you never know when like a classic, some kind of classic art or piece that you've seen is actually inspired by another classic work from a different medium. So it's interesting. And John Byrne is the one who's the most shameless about that. He seems like he'll use anything as a reference for his artwork. Because those comics have to get made, Phil K.
And Byrne is quick.
He is quick, man. Miller is still doing Daredevil at this time.
Right.
So he takes on Wolverine as a challenge. He wants to do the Jack Kirby draw an entire comic book in 7 days.
Wow.
So he did each issue in 7 days. So we're talking rough layouts. Okay. That's important to notice because it does not say Joseph Rubinstein on the cover, but Joseph Rubinstein is credited as the finisher. So, so Miller is there. It's rough layouts, but Rubinstein is the one that goes in and gives it a bit more form. Yeah, by all the techniques. But, if you're interested in this, I'll definitely just mention this to everybody. Definitely pick up this issue because they talk a little bit more about it. But Rubinstein says he was in close contact with Miller during this, and he would actually call him and say, like, what were you trying to do in this panel or this line or what have you? I want to accentuate it. Do you think it would be okay if I tried this or I did this? I mean, so he was really working closely with him. He didn't just take the layouts and then just go off on his own, So it's interesting how he brings the best out of Miller in this. I mean, this is definitely some of his cleanest pencil work for certain. But we are going to use the True Believers version of this. Mind you, I do not have the original issue 1 because it is darn pricey, and I'll be lucky to get a reader's copy at a decent price nowadays. But also with the old Marvel Universe here, you saw several panels that are from the miniseries. I believe this is one. And we've got some John Byrne and whatnot. Which one is that one from? I'm trying to think.
That's the later X-Men.
But those are definitely Byrne there.
Like in the 190s maybe.
And then here you've got the cover, and then this is from a panel in one of the issues there.
Yeah.
But then those two are both burned. But it's interesting. They talk about his superhuman powers. They say he's only as strong as a person of his normal size and build and activity.
Over the years,
I'm sure they have.
Well, they say, but due to his adamantium skeleton, he's able to lift more because his bone structure can handle more force. And then some people even said that maybe his healing factor enhances his muscle in terms of speed.
Okay, that makes sense. I'd buy all that.
So it depends on who's writing. Eventually, you know what happens when Wolverine becomes Wolverine. So he's so popular that every writer says, I got to add something else to it. Let's make his healing factor stronger. You can't, before you could kill Wolverine, but if you cut his throat, he may bleed out. And then, he can regenerate from a cell.
They literally talk about that in here where they break down his superhuman powers. They actually talk about the sequence where he gets wounded by Shinjin. They talk about it specifically. And they say that he can heal really fast, but wounds to like vital organs and stuff, it takes time. And they actually use as an example. And they also basically say he has dark vision to a certain extent. And they talk about his heightened senses and all that stuff. So it's very interesting. They do say he is an expert in several forms of unarmed combat. Not all, but several. So yeah, but I'm going to guess that he had some ninjutsu somewhere in there along the way. But if he's military trained, even in Canada, they did train in Defendo. see our Comic Book Dojo, the first episode, breaking down Captain America. We mentioned Defendo and its origins there, where it was the first sanctioned fighting style that they taught to a combined group of units between Canada and the United States. They taught them Defendo, which was modified jiu-jitsu. So it all goes back to jiu-jitsu for some reason. But issue 1, absolute classic in terms of both the story and just the art. Now, I've mentioned like in videos talking about John Byrne and even the one we did recently on Deathstroke, how like big face splash pages can be boring and lazy. But there's enough artifice in this that is not boring and it's not lazy. It is just a close-up, but there's an intensity there, okay? And there's enough there to make you ask questions like, what is he doing? What is he, there's something going on here and it's intense. But just the look of the page itself, it's appealing to the eye. It has nuance. It has artifice in there.
Also shows that Wolverine's the older man. He's a man. Look at the wrinkles. Even though he's like
squirrely. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, he's got the crow's feet.
That's right.
Yep.
He's a grown man.
A grown ass man, as we say. And here, this is the first time this appears. I'm the best there is at what I do.
And what I do.
But what I do isn't very nice.
Very nice.
First time that hit the page, Chris Claremont earned every penny with that because that has reverberated throughout the timeline of Wolverine. It's interesting to note, I love these True Believers, but they are not facsimile editions. You'll see modern ads here. Right. This was obviously not an ad for 1982. It was like, wow, they were ahead of the times. They knew it was going to happen. No.
Go through a time machine.
But let's pull up the trade paperback. Let's look at this. Okay, so this is the opening splash. They've screwed up the pageation.
Right.
For the trade paperback. So it's not reading.
Right.
It's not reading correctly. So you're spoiling
the storytelling.
Yeah, one page to the next. So unbelievable. The first thing that jumps out at you with this book is Miller's insistence on not filling in the entire page. I mean, he does, but he doesn't. It's like he's trying to break away from that rectangle. He does not want to have that hard rectangle because there's no other reason to leave all of this. To leave all of this negative space here. Now here he fills it with some narrative. Chris Claremont fills it with narration. But, there's no reason for that here. So it just makes it kind of artsy. I mean, I like it. I like the approach. And you see with his scenery here, his establishing shot that has a very kind of Mobius feel to it, or even like a light, airy manga style, like you would see in Lone Wolf and Cub. And that's definitely a major influence on this. But it's interesting to see the depth and the form that Joseph Rubinstein's inks bring to this, and his choice of like zipatones and that sort of thing, how they bring out some of the images. And this is just a great introduction. Didn't they use this for the Wolverine movie where he, or maybe they show the bear off screen and they just show him like finding it dead, and they use the bar scene,
fight,
but they don't use this scene so much. But I love this sequence here where he uses this, the symbol of the swinging claws to lead you all the way from that opening shot through resolution, and then finishing up. And here now we've seen Miller do these fight scenes so often with ninjas and samurais and whatnot that it's become almost like an alphabet or a series of chords, musical chords that he just mixes up. So they all just feel true, they ring true, but what we know from samurai and sword use is there's generally only like 3 or 4 positions that you swing from, so it's not real complicated. And there's not so much blocks or that sort of thing. It's a matter of striking first and striking at the first weak area. But yeah, all good stuff here. Using a lot of negative space, very interesting stylistic choices. I like the way that the sound effects is counterbalanced against the severed arm.
And it shows you how powerful Wolverine is, that he can actually take on a frenzied bear and pretty much come out unscathed.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he doesn't seem to take any sort of blow whatsoever. And this bear comes hot out the gate.
You have to lure him like do all fall on me technique, like like with a spear. Let's get down low wind and let it come up high and drop on our spear.
Yeah. And he doesn't use the guard on it like Batman
with a leopard.
But yeah, I think this scene is actually recreated for the Wolverine X-Men Origins movie, the opening sequence here. And here, this picture is just phenomenal. I mean, and this has a lot of Joe Rubinstein in it because he's using zipatones he's laying out here to really give this some form and bring it to life. I mean, this looks, it's almost photorealistic. I mean, the way that they've gone over it and brought it out. But I just love how simple the plot setup is for this. It's all in one page here. It's all my letters from Mariko came back. They don't want me to come. Bad move. I'm going.
Stop me.
All in one page. That's your plot. You get his reason that he wants to go, what made him come to these decisions, and the action that he's taking.
Smoking on a plane.
Boom. Yep. Back in the days when you could sit and smoke on the plane. He's not on the Blackbird, it is worth noting. He booked himself a flight.
Got him a commercial flight.
Yep. Japan Airlines Flight 007.
Oh. God. Canada style.
Yep. Love the use of the zips here on the Wolverine. It's all good looking stuff. Nice backgrounds. Nice use of negative space. Using the far background to
cross-checking and everything.
Silhouette the medium ground. Very interesting. Here, Miller is definitely drawing on his influence from Lone Wolf and Cub. Now, Lone Wolf and Cub made the transition, speaking of the manga, made the transition to the States, I think in 87, 89.
Okay.
Was when they started releasing those. It wasn't Comico, it was First Comics who did it initially. But Miller, I mean, he was probably exposed to the original manga, before it was even translated. And here you see that, they always used just classical Japanese settings and temples and statues and all that kind of Budo type stuff. And Shinto everywhere. And this is an interesting use of, I forget what they call this color process where there's no actual, there's no ink line. It's done in the coloring. It's the colorist who had to come in and do it. So it's not inking. They had to flesh out, the pencils somehow there. But the backgrounds are very sparse, but it's just enough to tell the story. And the way Miller chooses his angles in each panel, I mean, it's so cinematic. I mean, you establish the scene, and then here you get a close-up on Mariko. Now, rather than seeing the nice, big, beautiful face, from the previous pages, you just get that eye, and you're like, why are we just seeing this eye, and you have this whole slow reveal as she doesn't want to turn her face, and then he sees her, and he's like, face me, what? And he's shocked at what he sees. It's also worth noting the coloring in this particular reprint is really good, that they improved the coloring. They digitized the coloring. It doesn't have that old dotted process. And here we have the reveal where she's been battered, which almost brings out the berserker side of him.
But she calms him down.
Yep.
No Logan inside.
And this is really the mise-en-scene for this entire series, is showing how he's not just a berserker, how he does resist it. And the reasons that he does is because he feels, he's honor-bound, he's duty-bound to protect the woman he loves, to stop this. He doesn't care that she's married at this point. He thinks this is a false marriage and they love each other and they deserve to be together. But you won't see her abused in this way. And you see her husband return. Here they talk about honor and duty and tradition, and they kind of use the sword to become the symbolic framework of that, which is smart because that carries throughout the series. And then you see Wolverine dueling with Shinjin. They're using swords and that kind of thing. So it's great use of subtext and symbolism, but also making it practical, and it doesn't hit you over the head with it, which is a lesson that so many modern writers need to learn, to get back to using your subtlety and subtext.
Shows how strong he is.
Yep, just going to one hand lift this guy by his collar or his throat. I mean, it looks like he's actually just grabbing him by his face. Like he has no respect for him, just grabbing him by his chin, his mouth, just like he's trying to snatch the words out of his mouth. I mean, that's a fierce grab there, and yet lifts him right up. It took me a while to get used to the Wolverine claw, but I kind of like these, like the razor blade. Yeah, kind of the razor blade approach rather than the round, pointy approach.
Curved.
Yeah. Because I never quite understood, like, well, if they're pointy, then he just pokes people. He's not slashing so much. I guess he can scratch with the end, but they're not cutting. They're not blades. So that was always a little confusing to me. And here we go. Well, there must be ninjas afoot. Oh, Phil K. Drugged. Shurikens, throwing stars. Do.
And he wakes up.
And he's drugged. And of course, great use of storytelling. This is very film noir here. I'm sure you see this particular motif of the protagonist awakening in the darkness and slowly pulling out to reveal where he is, and
they
finding
also
out what
kind of
happened.
shows who they're going against, so they don't go in close combat. Range, hit them, boom, take them out.
Yep. Taken from the Deathstroke playbook there. Those ranged attacks, buddies.
Oh, that's an interesting one, like in the Titans X-Men when they meet and they dodge each other, hit each other like one time.
Might be another book worth looking at one day. But just great story here. And again, even the symbolism here is on display, that you're not worthy of a real sword. He says, we're going to duel with Boken, with wooden sword.
Wooden sword. You're not worthy of it. You're not skilled enough. Yep. And he kind of shows it. But he is drugged.
Yes, he is drugged here. But great subtext at play there. And all of these sword strokes, they deliver. You buy them. You believe that this is a decent fight. The stances, the footworks, the holds, the grips, they all look good. Of course, Miller's always been great at physical action, carrying on from his Neil Adams influence. But great stuff here. And then you've got him chopping him with the Boken on both sides of his neck. This is just great stuff.
And it shows that Shinji was using sinister nerve strikes that
Yes.
would kill an ordinary man.
Pressure points. He says nerve clusters in here at some point.
He's a kill ordinary man.
But here he notes pressure points. And this is a decent use of narration of the caption boxes.
Right.
Claremont could really go overboard, but he lays back a little bit here. But he adds to it, by mentioning the pressure points. He could either paralyze someone or kill. Too late, I realize which of them he's going for. So just building the drama there, and then throws his sword away, showing he has no honor, though. He's throwing away the symbol of his honor.
It looks like he's just taking a beating with the swords and can't handle it, and then he's going in for the kill. He realized that what he was actually doing.
Yep.
But Shinji's more skilled.
I cut cloth instead of flesh. He flaming near snaps my spine. Now that one I don't know about. Like, really? Adamantine spine? But yeah. I can see him, like hitting another pressure point, as we like to say, or nerve cluster.
Perfectly between the vertebrae.
Yep. But my legs go numb. Follows that up with a Suki strike to the throat. I don't know what he's talking about with a Suki strike to Suki. I don't know what that's supposed to be. But as a kid, I bought it. I mean, I learned all of my Japanese terms and Russian terms from the X-Men.
I know.
And German, Unglabich.
Tavadish.
We'll have to ask our German friend about those.
Oh, we did already. We did like the A4 line.
We asked him about Unglabich. Who knows what he's going to say to that? But just great use of the wide vertical panels here. Even though they're very narrow, Miller always just accentuates the action.
And this just lifts them off. Boom, in the throat. And then did the Bruce Lee to him.
Yep, it does the Bruce Lee, the howling double stomp there. But great use of the dynamic Z flow here. You can see it, to just zip the reader right through the page. And then, this is straight out of Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, killing O'Hara. O'Hara, no!
You have to show you do a cheek shake on camera.
It's intense, man. But good stuff. I like how the foot,
shadows into him.
Yeah, how it pushes into pushes you into the darkness there, and where he knocks him out. And he asks him, Mariko, is this who who fights for you? Is he worthy of such a prize? And she says, no. Oh. And at that point, Wolverine is broken. Here you go, another use of that color process. Yes. So again, for each one of those, that's individual colors that they had to lay out there in the screening process. And another classic Miller protagonist run in with thugs here, straight out of Assault on Precinct 13 or something.
Gotcha.
I've never liked the look of these little throwing blades. Like the handles look more like blades than the blades do. Right. To me, for some reason, they always look kind of backwards like that. But I love the use of the zips here to give this some form and shape. And then here we see Yuriko, his other love interest, represents the more animalistic side of Wolverine. And nice ad for one of the more recent reprintings of the trade paperback. So there you go. If you don't have it, this story and this series is worth owning in pretty much every way, shape, or form. Whether it's the trade paperback, the individual issues. I'm sure there's a nice hardback collection or two. I don't know if they've released an artist's edition of the original artwork or not, but that would be really nice to get a hold of. Yeah, more ninjas on the cover. You see the Miller fascination with ninjas growing there.
Ninja.
So, Phil K., how influential was this series on your development?
Wow. I mean, when that series came out, I don't think I had I think I had maybe one of the issues, or maybe issue 1 or 2, but then I ended up getting the trade. I bought a couple of different trades, but
right.
It was just a classic Wolverine story, the story that I remember reading it as a kid and just was like blown away by it. Really didn't see anything like it before, especially when you get the complete story and the combat, just the things that Wolverine went through, in that series. Just the carnage.
Yeah, right.
He causes and everything. But Frank Miller, I mean, his art style is legendary.
It's good stuff. It's a definite departure for the time. 1982, so there's no supervillains in it. Like, it's surprising there's no Silver Samurai in this.
That's right.
But they use Shinjin. There's a mispronunciation for you. No supervillains, no Sabretooth, none of that.
No other mutants.
Yeah, just this background, this backstory of the love story, and then this battle for
honor,
filial duty and honor, and the spirit of Budo really on the comic book page. So,
and it showed that Shingen outsmarted him. He planned for it, had a plan in place to take him out, which basically drugged him, and then outsmarted him. And is more skilled.
So there you go. Fascinating breakdown. So we have a superhuman versus a regular human with better technique and superior tactics, at least. He causes Wolverine to lose his control. And,
yes, exactly.
And he takes advantage of it.
Psychologically and
takes advantage of it. So there you see the psychological battle unfold. So I'm sure there's something in the Book of Five Rings about that Wolverine should have studied. So anyway, there you go, Phil K. There's issue 1 of the Wolverine Limited Series.
By Chris Claremont and Frank Miller.
The one and only. So thanks for watching, citizens. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that little bell so you get notifications when new videos go up. You can find all of our links right down below this video in the description area. But Phil K will tell you where you can find him.
On Twitter at FatJitsu, FATJITSU. See you there.
And you can find me at all of those right down below. I already typed them out, so I'm not going to say it over again. But there you go. Thanks for watching, denizens. We'll see you next time. Mate!